Today we're continuing in a series titled Divine Disruptions, where we're taking a look at the way that Jesus handled and navigated disruptions or interruptions within his ministry. And when you think about Jesus' ministry, my goodness, if there is ever something that didn't warrant interruption or disruption, it'd be that, his ministry. What we know is it lasted right around 3 years, and within those 3 years, time really was of the essence. His ministry, it seemed to have a hard start date and obviously a hard ending date, the cross. And although it was kind of the end of his ministry, we know it wasn't necessarily the finish line for his life. But if there's anybody who didn't want to be interrupted, we'd think that it would certainly not be Jesus. And in that time, in those 3 years, Jesus really had to be about God's business. And God's business, it seems even today, can get lost in kind of the red tape, the rules or the programs, and God's business can get lost even through misguided leaders or misguided people. But for Jesus, he made God's business pretty clear. That's God's business has always and will always be first and foremost about people. And today we're going to jump into a story about Jesus in Matthew chapter 15. And contextually speaking, when we get to Matthew chapter 15, what we see has happened is that Jesus had grown quite a bit in popularity as he teaches. And even that teaching had a lot of opposition, and the crowds would gather to hear what Jesus has to say. And Jesus would display the power of God working mightily through him as he healed people. And so that would gather some crowds. But even on a more personal level, by the time we get to Matthew 15, Jesus is feeling the emotions of a loss. John the Baptist, somebody close to Jesus, Jesus had just lost him just shortly before we get to Matthew chapter 15. And so undoubtedly, as Jesus was fully God but fully human, he would have been experiencing those heavy emotions of loss. The Bible tells us at times that Jesus wept. And so he'd be feeling that loss of a close friend of his, much like we would feel after we lost somebody close to us. And so when we get to Matthew 15, chapter 21, we read, "Then Jesus left Galilee and went north to the region of Tyre and Sidon." Now, once you start thinking about geographically what that looks like when Jesus leaves Galilee and heads north to Tyre and Sidon, it's no short trip. As a crow flies, it would be right around 35 miles. Definitely longer when you consider the roads that Jesus and his disciples would have to navigate to get to this area. It'd be about 12 to 15 hours of walking. And so it's a long journey as Jesus is going through kind of a heavy part of his life. His ministry is thriving as the crowds flock to him, but he's feeling broken a little bit inside by the loss of his friend John the Baptist. But also when we look geographically what's going on, it's not just 35 miles one direction. What Jesus and his disciples are doing is they're heading out of a Jewish area. They're heading into a Gentile area. You and I, we could think about it as they're leaving a religious area and heading to a non-religious area. They're going on the other side of the tracks. They're going to the unchurched. And then when they get there, it says in verse 22, "A Gentile woman who lived there came to Jesus, pleading, 'Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David, for my daughter is possessed by a demon that torments her severely.'" So as soon as they get into this area, this Gentile woman, this woman from the other side of the tracks, this non-Jew, this unchurched individual, she comes running up to Jesus, pleading that he heal her daughter. There's a lot of remarkable things in this story, but one of them is that Jesus' popularity has reached this unchurched area. There have been these rumors of his power. There have been these rumors of his grace. There's been these rumors of what Jesus can do when you're broken. He can heal you. And so as an outsider, this unchurched woman would have heard these things. And so she's approaching Jesus and she's going to find out if they're true or not. And in verse 23, it says, "But Jesus gave her no reply, not even a word." Jesus gave her no reply. I mean, she's pleading in front, "Please heal my daughter," but he doesn't say a word. Now, when we read that, I think we instantly start wanting to guess Jesus' intent. I mean, why is he not saying anything to this woman, this unchurched woman, this Gentile woman who's pleading with him? Now, keep in mind, Jesus is going through just a range of emotions internally. It's been a long trip. As a father, there are times I am just beat. I'm just worn out. And my children come to me and they're making this request. And sometimes I just sit there, breathe, and I don't say a word. And so we don't know what Jesus' intent is here when he just doesn't say anything in response. But we know the man is just worn out. He's not on the verge of sinning, but he could just be tired. But per usual, what happens from time to time in Scripture is when Jesus is silent, the disciples try to speak into the void. And oftentimes, they even reveal kind of their own misleadings of their heart when they do speak into the silence. And so verse 23 continues on and tells us, then his disciples urged him to send her away. She's pleading to Jesus. Jesus isn't responding, and so they kind of try and read the room. I think they do so wrongly, obviously. And say, just send her away, tell her to go away. No, she's bothering us with all of her begging. And it's subtle, and I don't know if Matthew wanted to paint this portrait or not, but it's interesting that the disciples, they don't even speak to her. They don't tell her to go away. They're maybe not even looking at her. They're just wanting Jesus to send her away. And in doing so, they show no compassion for this woman. Maybe the ministry of Jesus is starting to get to some of their heads a little bit. They want to be a part of the big things, the feedings of the thousands of people. They want to be about the big things. They want to be about all the other incredible healings, right? They want to be associated with those powerful moments. But this woman, maybe they're about bigger, more spiritual matters. And unfortunately, we can get that way too. We can get so focused on God and our plans. We get so focused on religion that we forget about his business, which is the person that's right in front of us. That person in our family. That coworker of ours who doesn't know God. The moms and dads in the stands that we cheer next to. The gas clerk. So we're just trying to check out there and leave as fast as we can. But finally, Jesus does speak in verse 24, and he says to the woman, he says, I was sent only to help God's lost sheep, the people of Israel. And this can seem perplexing at first. And if this is one of the first times you've been listening to a teaching about Jesus, that can seem even more confusing, right? But Israel, right, the Jews had the first chance to identify Christ as the Messiah, as the King. And we know later on biblically that it's their responsibility to take his message to the ends of the earth. But also what's happening here is, I like to say, Jesus is playing some chess, not checkers. He's not just reacting to the conversation. He's being smart about it. He's being methodical. He's kind of calculating the direction that this conversation is going to go. And it's heading towards a historically just unbelievable, remarkable moment. Matthew 15:25, it says, but she came and worshiped him, pleading again, Lord, help me. When you think about this woman from the other side of the tracks, this unchurched woman, this Gentile, she's understanding Jesus more clearly than even the most religious Jewish leaders. And it says she came and worshiped him. Some versions of the Bible say she came in and she actually knelt down before him. She's showing with all of her body that Jesus is King, that she recognizes his power to change these things, to save her daughter. But Jesus responded, he says, it isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs. Now that can make us pause for a moment and we wonder, what, name calling Jesus? But he's not being derogatory here by calling the woman a dog. Once again, he's playing chess, not checkers. What he's doing here is that he's reflecting the attitude that Jews, the kind of the view they have of the Gentiles, the way that we could say the church has viewed the unchurched. He's chess, not checkers. But what I love about this woman's response next is that she's persistent. She's clever. She's playing checkers, or she's playing chess too. She replied, that's true, Lord, but even dogs are allowed to eat the scraps that fall beneath their master's table. And Jesus' response, whatever he does next, is incredibly, incredibly critical. He will either reinforce a religion that's against outsiders, or he can respond by opening a door to them in a way that has never been opened before. He can open the door to the Lord, to God, to the kingdom for people no matter who they are, no matter what they've done, no matter what their reputation is, no matter what side of the tracks they call home. Jesus' response can either reinforce this generational hate, or he can build a bridge between it. He says, "Dear woman, your faith is great, your request is granted," and her daughter was instantly healed. And so much changed in that moment. In that moment, the world became aware that our God is in the unsettling business of meeting outsiders where they are and greeting them and giving them a seat at the king's table. I think we have to ask ourselves if we are in the same business as Jesus is. Do we really think that everybody is worthy of the good news of Jesus Christ? No matter who they are, no matter what they've done, no matter what their reputation is. Or are we like those disciples? Like we like to follow Jesus real close even though our heart isn't the same as his. Because every single one of us at one point in our lives, we are an outsider looking in. And we know that gap can seem huge. But for the lost people of the world, no matter who they are, no matter what they've done, you and I, we're that bridge. Maybe for that estranged family member of yours. Maybe that coworker that doesn't know who God is, that mom or dad you cheer with in the stands. It may be that clerk at the gas station whose life is just unbelievably broken and we just slow down enough to get to know them. But you and I, we are the bridge. Because people have heard about Jesus, right? In our culture, everyone has heard about Jesus. They've heard rumors of his power, rumors of his grace, rumors of his healing. And the only way they'll find out if any of it is true is by you and I loving well and giving them a seat at the king's table.